I want to give a lot of thanks to our colleagues at the Warner Archive Collection. I could talk to me privately and I'll tell you some interesting things, but the Warner Archive Collection does as good a job as any company in the world maintaining these films and getting them out to people and actually making these old classics accessible. There's a man there named George Feltenstein, who I call the gatekeeper of American cinema, because as you may know, Warner Brothers has the largest private film library in the world, almost 7,000 titles, and the home entertainment side of the business does a fabulous job in getting these out to people, and we're happy to be able to give away a package of their wares tonight, and the winner of this 4-film set is Heather Campbell. Is Heather Campbell in the audience? Heather Campbell didn't decide not to come and see The Guilty, the Film Noir Foundation restoration of The Guilty, even though she has a pass on the whole series. Nice job, Heather. How about Lynn Schwendemann? Lynn Schwendemann. You are the winner. If you don't mind just coming down here and grabbing this from me, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Good job, Lynn. Don't complain about any of these titles, though. There's some good stuff in there. Okay, now here, I have one to give away, and this one's going to someone who's going to have to earn it. Okay, and here's the way you're going to earn it. You've seen the poster for this year's festival that's out there in the lobby and in front of the theater and everything? Okay, raise your hand if you think you know the answer. Who can identify the famous work of art that poster is a rip-off of? Now, hold on now. There was a hand raised way in the back there. Can you name the painting and the painter? Yeah, that was this gentleman. Yeah, with your left arm up back there. And no, well, Pygmalion is not the full title of the painting. You know the full title of the painting? Correct. Pygmalion and Galatea. Very good. I'm going to give it to you anyway, even if you don't know the... Do you know the painter? No. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Jean-Léon Gérôme is the painter of Pygmalion and Galatea, which is our poster this year as a knockoff of that famous painting. And you know what you get for knowing that? Are you the person? I am she. You are she. Totally appropriate, you get from the Warner Archive Collection, Stakeout on Dope Street. You're very welcome. One of James Ellroy's favorite titles. He was saying, Eddie, I want to go on TCM and introduce a movie. I want to go on there and introduce Stakeout on Dope Street. So there you go. And I believe he did do that. Okay, now here's the story. Last night we showed Phantom Lady. It was one of the essential titles in the development of film noir. It was written by a man named Cornell Woolrich, even though if you were here and watched the movie maybe for the first time, when the credit came up it said William Irish, not Cornell Woolrich. He was one of those guys that was so prolific that he had to have multiple names when he wrote. So Cornell Woolrich is the name on most of the short stories that he wrote in the 1930s and 40s. William Irish was the name he wrote under when he wrote his incredible series of black novels in the 1940s. Black Alibi, The Black Path of Fear, The Black Curtain, Rendezvous in Black, Black Angel, everything black that you could ever possibly think of. And he is probably the most adapted writer, maybe next to Stephen King may have finally caught up with him, but he's probably the most adapted writer in Hollywood history, who was a contemporary at the time the movies were being made. The man had absolutely no use for the cinema. He was a hermit, lived by himself for most of his life at the Hotel Marseille in New York with his mother. The man is a trip. I mean, his life story is absolutely incredible. As I said in my book, Dark City, every time this guy heard a police siren in his room, he wrote a short story about what was happening to that person outside, you know. But he is almost synonymous with a literary type of noir. Something bad is going to happen to you for no reason whatsoever. And his world, if you read his short stories and his novels, the world that he depicts is so bleak and pessimistic and nihilistic that it was actually kind of difficult for Hollywood to truly capture the feel of his work on screen. They always kind of glamorized it or gussied it up. Like Night Has a Thousand Eyes with Edward G. Robinson and Gail Russell is a pretty glamorous thing. He's the guy who wrote the original story that Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window is based on, and that's a very technicolor version of Cornell Woolrich. Tonight, we are giving you the 100 proof, pure, undiluted, grade D Cornell Woolrich. This is not a B movie, this is a D movie, right? It is based on a short story called Two Men in a Furnished Room. They Are Not Lying. That is the sum total of the budget of this film, is contained in that title, Two Men in a Furnished Room. This is a product of Monogram Pictures, straight out of Poverty Row. The director of this film is a man named John Reinhardt, a super sophisticated Viennese director, theater director who came to Hollywood. And in the 1930s, people may not even be aware of this, John Reinhardt made an incredible amount of movies in Spanish, in Hollywood, for Spanish-speaking American audiences. That was something that the studios actually did. Not only did they have B units, they had foreign language units, because they made films especially for neighborhoods in the United States and areas that were Spanish-speaking enclaves, and they would make these movies just for those audiences. And John Reinhardt, who was fluent in many languages, was the maker at 20th Century Fox of a lot of these pictures for Spanish-speaking audiences. But in the 1940s, he went to work at Poverty Row and put out a series of really interesting B movies, and I'm not joking, with virtually no budget. And somehow, through his imagination and the work of the cinematographer, this movie captured the feel of Cornell Woolrich just about better than any movie that I have seen. And I was just really happy when our colleagues at the British Film Institute told me that they had a dupe negative of this film. And when we restored Woman on the Run, we also had them ship over that dupe negative of The Guilty. So at the beginning of the film, you'll see a British censor seal saying that this film is passed for British audiences, because that's the negative that it was made from. But I'm very, very glad that we were able to preserve this. It was one of the first movies produced by a man named Jack Rather, who was a Texas oil man who decided he wanted to get into the movie business. This is exactly the kind of person that wants to get into the movie business and should be in the movie business, because they already have money to lose. So he came to Hollywood, but of course, Jack Rather is one of those rich guys that just steps in it and it turns out to be a gold mine, you know, a gusher, because when he made this film, he met Bonita Granville, who was the star of this film, who was sort of one of several America's sweethearts. She had played Nancy Drew in the film series of Nancy Drew Mysteries in the late 1930s, and then she was trying to change her image, as so many actors were when they got into what we now call film noir in this period in the late 40s. So she plays, of course, she plays twin sisters in this movie. Okay, so twin sisters in a film noir. Do we know where that's going? Yeah. All right, so, but here's the thing. Jack Rather proposed to Bonita Granville on the set of this movie, and they became husband and wife and went on to make another fortune together, because they created one of the biggest television series in history, Lassie. There's absolutely nothing noir about Lassie. I got nothing on that one, right? Except that they made millions, and Bonita Granville retired a multi-millionaire. And the Jack Rather estate is still going to this day. We got to get the rights to this out of them so that we can put it out on Blu-ray. But anyway, and Don Castle was like the poor man's Clark Gable. I think there were 5 or 6 poor man's Clark Gables in Hollywood at this time. But he was the best man at the wedding, and one of the most tight-lipped and taciturn actors you will ever see. It's almost like, was he actually delivering the lines, or did they just dub them all in later? Because I can't actually see his lips moving when he's talking. But you'll see, this is something. And it's a film that is so odd for the time, and it really, if you know movies about unreliable narrators, I'm a sucker for an unreliable narrator story. And this is one of those movies that you see it the first time, and at the end you go, what? What was that? And then you watch it again and you realize they were setting you up kind of all along. So I hope you enjoy this. We spent money on it, so you better enjoy it. Ladies and gentlemen, the Film Noir Foundation's restoration of Cornell Woolrich's The Guilty. Yeah.